And hello again. Welcome to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. My name is Randy Cook. I'm here each week with Mark as we talk through some of the issues that you might be thinking about and wondering about and worried about. And, when it comes to retirement, this is something you've never done before. And you're hopefully only going to do it once and get the help you need to do it correctly. And that is why we have Mark here to kind of introduce you to how he does things and helps people in their retirement pursuits. How are you doing today, Mark?
I'm great, Randy. I'll be honest. Truthfully, we talk about the weather here in North Carolina, especially in the Triangle area. I mean, it's a roller coaster a lot of times. You'll be going through cold rain all of a sudden, and all of a sudden it's like 80 degrees.
I know.
Thinking, okay.
Spring has sprung.
Trying to make it work.
Yeah, right. Exactly right. Well, I'm glad we do this show every week because there's just so much that happens and changes by the week. I mean, we sit down here and do a show one day, and then the next day we've got all sorts of crazy stuff happening over in the Middle East. And then, you go home from work and gas prices went up 50 cents in one day. And now it's even more than that. And now you got the Fed that's meeting, and you wonder what they're going to do about this because inflation seems to be going up. So there's just a lot to talk about. And we worry, whether you're planning for retirement or you're in retirement, you say to yourself, what should I do to protect myself from these up and down markets? So we've got the geopolitical stuff. We've got, the local economy stuff. We've got the politics certainly involved with this. And also we've got a midterm election that's going to happen this year. Add that in, and that adds into a lot of volatility. This is Sarah Malik, and she was on CNBC saying in these years with midterm elections, we do see some up and down.
If you look at history, during years where there's midterm elections, markets tend to have a lot of intra-year volatility. On average, intra-year, markets decline 18% at some point during the year, during a midterm election year. That doesn't mean it ends up that way, but it means we're going to be in for some volatility likely.
Okay, so we've seen the market swing 1,000 points, go down, and then kind of rally back up at the end. But, 18%, that'd get your attention for sure if you lost that in your retirement accounts. Is this a year, Mark, where you're going to pay more attention to risk management with your clients? Not that you don't already, but is this a year that people are coming in and saying, Mark, I'm really worried about all this. We got to move towards some safety here, towards some preservation, that kind of thing.
Well, let me ask you something. If you're within 12 months of retirement and there's a chance the market could drop 18%, and that could potentially affect the bottom line of what you could pull from that investment, would that matter to you? I mean, that's the question you really got to ask yourself, right, Randy?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, hold the phone, stop it. I don't know about go to cash or anything like that, but, dial back the risk, I think, is what I'd be talking to you about.
And she's not off base. Sarah's right. I mean, we look back at 2022, right? We look at that midterm. Well, what happened in 2022? The S&P dropped 18% and NASDAQ dropped 33%. That was not a favorable year in the market. Was it a correction? No, because you have to have a correction of over 20% in the S&P that has to last for a lot longer than it did there. Obviously, usually over at least a 2-year period of time. So we haven't really had a real correction in the market in how long, Randy? Since 2009, right? 2007 to 2009 was the full correction we had. That was that, TARP money and all that stuff. And we had the drop of the market about 56.5% from high to low before it started to recover, and then eventually recovered by about 2013. So, just kind of looking at these different things and scenarios, just understanding what a person might need. No, I think you should just jump over to cash. I was talking to my wife the other day, and we were talking about different banks where they're offering 0.25% or they're offering 2% on money market. I mentioned some money markets to some of my clients that might be paying 3%. And truthfully, you could actually just open up a Fidelity account with us. We have a ticker symbol in there, and the interest rate is fairly good. Those are different things you can do, and that's liquid. You don't get hit with a fee on that. So there's so many different things you could do if you just want to get conservative for a second and just be, let's just say preserve what you worked your whole life for and just be cautious, right? There's so many things you can do.
Well, one of the things that you just mentioned is we haven't seen a big correction or a big pullback in the market for quite a while now. I mean, COVID, we went down a lot, but it bounced back up so fast. And then we had, just this past year in April when we had Liberation Day and the market went down 12% in one day. And then 2 weeks later went right back up again. So we're not accustomed right now over the last really 10 years or more of seeing the market go down and stay down. And I wonder, you think we're getting a little amnesia on that? We're thinking, it always comes back. there are times when the market stays down for months and even years at a time, doesn't it?
It does. I mean, let's just go back less than a year ago, back in April of 2025. Weren't people really freaking out about tariffs at that point?
Absolutely.
Yeah, people were losing their marbles. They were thinking, oh my gosh, I can't afford to do this. I'm not going to invest in the market until tariffs go away. I'm like, well, buckle up, right? You know, truthfully, we don't know what's going to happen. So what we can do is we can participate in what we see. So for us, a lot of times we have that conversation, and we talk about this on the show often. It's preservation, income, and growth. Those are your standards for wanting to retire on time and wanting to make sure that you have enough income, preservation tactics, and growth. Preservation, income, and growth. They all work together. And yes, we can have a bit of each one, but how do you go about that? Well, have a conversation with me. Let's sit down, have a conversation, and talk about what you could do a little bit differently than what you're currently doing right now. Because you might be within 5 years of retirement. You might be within 10 years of retirement. And here's another one. Here's a kicker right here. If you purchased a fixed index annuity anytime from like 2018 to 2022 or so, before interest rates went crazy, right? That's a great time to look at some of those products, because some of those products probably were priced fairly low with regards to interest rates and how they might have priced the indexes. Things have changed drastically since then. If you want to have your annuity looked at, whether it's fixed index annuity, variable annuity, whatever it might be, if you want to have it looked at, be glad to look at it for you and have a conversation with you.
Just give us a call. It is 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. What does that do? That gets you a no-cost, no-obligation meeting with Mark to talk about your questions about retirement and asking about markets and risk levels and taxes and all the different questions that you have about your retirement years. You can also look at the website, which is more2retire.com. And Mark, as I think about things, where to put your money and the different risk levels that are involved, there's only about 4 or 5 different places really that you can put your money. There's banks, there's the stock market, there's real estate, and then there's the insurance companies. And each one comes with a different level of risk, a different level of return. And when we talk about, let's move away from risk, does that really mean completely pulling myself out of the stock market? There are places within the market that have different varying levels of risk that you can explore in the same way. You don't have to just shove everything into a bank.
Absolutely. I mean, just looking at maybe a 60-40 ETF model, you talk about, well, does that have enough fixed income to kind of hold up the portfolio? At times it does. But there's also dividend models as well that have much lower volatility. So when you look at the standard deviation, it's much lower. And that could potentially hold up the portfolio as well. But there's also other things. You've also got structured notes. Those are alternative investments. A structured note is just simply a person saying, okay, I want one of these big banks. It could be like a Bank of America or JP Morgan Chase or someone like that you say, okay, I want you to borrow my money, and then you're going to tell me how I'm going to get returns on this money. Usually they're based on certain indexes. And then what the banks will do is they'll give you a buffer or a barrier. And you're like, okay, well, what the heck does that mean, Mark? Well, I'm going to keep it as simple as day. All right. A buffer and barrier are 2 different ways that you can have some preservation tactics on your money. A buffer is where the bank will say, we will take the first, let's just say, for example, 20% loss. So if the indexes that you had that were underlying of your particular contract with your bank for a year or 2 years, however long this note is, let's say it goes down 25%. And you have a 20% buffer, the bank will take that first 20% loss, and you might lose 5%. A barrier is a little different. A lot of times if they do a 20% buffer, a lot of times they'll do like a 30% barrier. That means they'll protect you up to 30%, meaning that the bank will take the first 30% loss. However, if it breaks that 30%, if it goes to 35, you have a 35% loss. Okay. But just in mind, keep in mind 20% and 30%. Yeah, that's a good way to look at, hey, are there other ways I can do this other than CDs, treasuries, bonds and things like that? Absolutely. There are so many different things we can look at and choose and pick that might be a good fit for you.
One of the things about this show is that Mark lays out so many of these different options that you can look at. And you may think as you go into retirement, I got stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. That's all I know. That's all that's out there. Well, there's more out there to choose from. And Mark can kind of lay out those options for you at the different risk levels that they are. Give him a call. Let's do the no cost, no obligation look at your retirement. If you're wondering how your income is going to come in, if you're wondering how to preserve your money in retirement, give Mark a call. It's 984-300-1984, 984-300-1984, or the website, which is more2retire.com. It's bottom of the page there. You can put some little information in there. Mark will reach out and get the conversation going. All right. Many of you are worried about how much you've saved, and you wonder, is it enough? Because you see all of these articles that say $1.2 million is what you've got to have to retire. And that just, you go, I can't get there. Well, that's okay, according to this article. One of the things about people in retirement right now is there's such a fear of running out of money. People are accessing their money and they're taking so little, not 4%, not 3%. They're taking 1 and 2% because they're so scared of running out of money. And while that's happening, a stock market like we've had the last couple of years goes up, 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 up. In retirement, your money is growing and it's getting larger. And it says here, your money could actually double in your retirement years. So, Mark, what do you think of that? I mean, my first question is, do you need to double your money in retirement? What would you say to that?
That's a loaded question there, Randy. I'm going to try and figure out how to answer this one here.
Well, everybody wants their money to grow, but do you have to grow your money at the risk of not enjoying your retirement? I guess that's where we're going.
No, of course not. So let's just say, for example, you're the type of person that wants some risk in your portfolio. Mm-hmm. Maybe you have a lot of preservation tactics. You have a lot of things. You have some built-in fixed index annuities. You have a fixed index annuity that might have one of those lifetime income riders that they call them. They're called guaranteed lifetime income riders. It gives you lifetime income, and you feel like you have enough preservation tools in place for your income. You have enough preservation tools for preservation of not losing the asset. Okay, so now we have this other market money we want to play with. Well, how much time do you have with it? If you have a lot of time with it, of course we can take some risk. It just depends on what kind of risk you want to take, what kind of calculated risk you want to take. There's many different things we could look at to do those things. What I would say is dial it back first and make sure that in retirement you have your preservation tactics built in. We do believe in fixed and fixed index annuities here because we've seen the fruits of what they'll do for people. You know that the asset's going to be there. You know that the income's going to be there. These are the things you don't sweat. Insurance companies have the highest restrictions of what they've got to do for folks. So, for example, the banks used to have 10% that they had to have in reserves at all times. That was sort of pulled back in 2020. They don't really have a requirement anymore, but generally speaking, banks do keep 10, 15% in reserves, right? Insurance companies have to do more than that. Generally speaking, insurance companies have to stay above 95% in reserves, and most good insurance companies that we will work with will be over 100%. Mm-hmm. So that'll just give you an idea of how strict they are on insurance companies because they're providing these preservation tactics you can't really get anywhere else in this fashion. So during the Great Depression, it was the insurance companies, not the federal government, that bailed out the banking industry. Mm-hmm. So when we go back in history and we try to understand, do you want to build in some preservation tactics? No, you don't have to have all your money in the market. There are ways that we can do this. And then we figure out how much time do you have left with the other money that maybe you could take some risk with, and what kind of risk do we want to take, and what kind of calculated risk do we want to take?
Well, one thing we don't want you doing is being so scared in retirement that the money's not going to be there that you don't enjoy your retirement to the fullest. Certainly in those first 10 years of retirement when you want to do lots of stuff, let's make sure that the guaranteed income is there for you. We talk about it all the time. You've got a 401k. It provides growth. It can provide some preservation. Does it provide income? No, that's the next step. This is life beyond the 401k. You're going to use it finally in your retirement years to enjoy yourself. Give Mark a call and let's walk through how all of that works. Here's the number and the website, 984-300-1984, 984-300-1984. 1984. Give Mark a call. It's a no-cost, no-obligation meeting about your retirement. Get all your questions out on the table. If you find it's a good fit with Mark, maybe we sit down and put the papers out and really start to get down to it. 984-300-1984 or more2retire.com. All right, we've been hearing for years that the Social Security Trust Fund is going to run out of money in 2033. And they've just done the new calculations. The bad news is they've moved the date up 1 year. It's now 2032. It's getting kind of close, folks. And they're going to cut back, they say so far, benefits by about 28%. So, Mark, if you're getting $3,000, now you're getting $2,500, and that's a big hit for a lot of people. And so the question is how are we going to fix this? And Teresa Gilarducci is one of the people that we've heard from before, and she says that there's no way that we're going to be able to fix this unless they just simply raise taxes. That's how it's going to happen. So maybe we're going to have more taken out of our checks or something like that. Now, do you see that happening for retirees? Do you see a real problem? I mean, when you put together a financial plan, a retirement plan for somebody, and you got to take a 10, 15% hit on Social Security, would that be the linchpin that would say, now it's going to fail? Is it that you walk that close a tightrope on this thing?
I would hope not,
Yeah.
but there are cases where there are clients that are very tight to the vest,
Okay.
and they need a certain amount of income, they need a certain amount of assets, and maybe we can't derive anything more from it without taking some risk.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways where you can take some risk and have some higher distribution rates. But again, you have to take risk to do that. And the question is, are you willing to take some of the risk, and at what cost? Because again, if I can't put my head on the pillow comfortably at night knowing at least we've built in some preservation tactics, because as an advisor, I want to feel comfortable about that, then I really have to question what kind of a job I've done. So when we look at Social Security, and you could have benefits at 20 to 30% less than what they currently are, we have to take that into account when we're doing retirement planning. If we're going to plan for retirement, we're planning for income. We're planning for making sure you have preservation tactics, what you've built and worked your whole life for, you want to preserve, right? And then income, how does that relate to preservation tactics? Well, you want to make sure the income is built with a lot of preservation tactics so you can feel good about the type of income you're getting, because then hey, it's going to be in there next month. Hey, it's going to be in there the month after that. And you don't worry as much, right? So we've got that, but with regards to income and preservation, you also have to plan for inflation and taxes. And taxes could go up. And yes, Social Security could reduce by 28%. It's a very distinct possibility if we don't fix the trust fund. Because why? Because the trust fund won't be there, and that's where you lose that percentage. So at this point, we're trying to figure out the run rate of how that works. Well, why don't we just plan for the what ifs? What if it is that way? If we plan for that, then we can feel confident about the outcome of the other side of things. And that's what we want to do. So do I want to look at certain preservation tactics like annuities? Absolutely. Do I believe in market money? Of course I do. We want to build the economic engine. We want to do well for our country and invest and grow. So there's a combination of a lot of different things we want to do. So growth is that last thing. What's a good sensible growth in retirement? But income is essential.
It kind of cuts both ways on these stories. They come out with these stories and say Social Security is going to cut back. So people are now going, well, I'll go at 62 and I'll get it while the getting's good because I want to make sure I get as much as I can. And then there's other people that say, well, if they're going to cut it back by 28%, maybe I wait so I can get a larger number. And then that way the 28% won't hurt me as bad. So it could go both ways. Mark, is it a conversation that you have with people that say, hey, Social Security could get cut back. Why don't we try our best to leave this thing until 68, 69, 70 and take it later? Or is that not a consideration?
It's always a consideration. We'll have that conversation. 62, 65, 67, 70. Most people are age full at age 67, meaning that if they're still going to work full time, you don't want to turn on Social Security until you're 67 years old, because then you can pretty much make however much you want to make, right? 70, same thing. You can wait to 70 and do it that way and just max out your social. That just depends on if that works in your particular retirement plan. Now, if you want to take it to 62, you have to keep in mind, do you have enough money to gap you for insurance before you get to Medicare? That's another conversation to have. And then then if you're retiring at 65, the question is how much money did you make the 2 previous years before you turn 65? How does that affect your Medicare premiums for the first 2 years, 65 and 66 years old? Every one of these things we take into account when we're doing a retirement plan, because we want to make sure that you are self-sufficient in your retirement plan. And our goal is to give you good advice and make sure that when we're sitting down with you and going over your overall situation, that you look at that plan and you say, I can do this. And I want you to feel confident, because here's the thing. I was watching a movie recently. They were about to go into combat. It was an MMA movie. It was interesting though.
All right.
And he was about to enter this tournament. He was about to go into the ring. He was leaving the dressing room, and the fighter was a little bit like, his head was down. He was taking a breath, and the trainer looked at him. He goes, are you ready? He goes, yeah, I'm ready. Kind of reluctantly. He looked at me, said, you can do this. And he said, look at me. He said, I want to hear it from you. And the fighter, instead of reluctantly, more like, I'm ready to do this in a way that is cautious. I can do this. And that's the thing. We want to be able to do that with you and tell you can do this. And if we can tell you can do this, we feel confident about what we're saying. I think that we're going to have a great relationship and get you into those retirement years where you feel like you look back and you say, I'm so glad I chose to work with Marc Oslar.
Yeah, one of the things I think that's common when people come in to sit down and talk to a financial advisor is that's their question. Can I retire? Can I do this? And to do the math, to actually see it right there in front of you is that moment where you actually see, yeah, I can do this. And then you got a decision to make. Do you want to go back to work? And with that in mind, that you could leave anytime you want to, think of the power of that, or that the next week you turn in your keys and say, I'm done. The meeting needs to take place to do the math on your retirement. We do that for you at no cost or obligation. Give Mark a call. It's 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984, or the website is more2retire.com. There you'll see the steps to more that are right there on the website that you can discuss with Mark, kind of going through the treetop view, and we'll talk about that a little later on today. But going through those steps to get you to that retirement place is what our goal is. More2retire.com or 984-300-1984. All right, so one of the things about all this talk of millionaires and billionaires out there, we have an image of those people, and they all have a raft of financial advisors and tax people and all these different things that they have. And they probably have somebody, I have people for that, when it comes to their finances. One person that is not that person, apparently, is Oprah Winfrey. She was just talking recently about how it is important that you keep in touch with your finances.
My thing is sign every check. I still do. And also show up for all the financial meetings, whether you know what they're talking about or not. Yeah. I still see all the invoices. It makes me ill. Have found mistakes. But I think if you don't, then you're just sort of floating and you don't have any idea of how things operate, how things really run, what things really cost, what it costs to be you. Because there's a price to be you. And nobody else knows what that is. And the person who really should know is the person who's in charge.
Very interesting. Okay. I don't know if I believe all that. That she actually writes all her checks. I'm not sure. But there's two things there. Number one is her involvement in her finances. Mark, talk to me about that one first. How involved do people want to be in their retirement plan? Do they want to say, hey, I want to keep this 10% over here that I can play with, or I want to know everything you're doing and the purpose that you're doing, or Mark, I'm going to shove this your way like I'm shoving chips out onto a table. I'm going on a cruise. You take care of it. I'll talk to you in a year. What?
Oh, I have.
You got all
of that, Randy,
okay.
all of it.
All right.
Pack it all in. No, when I have somebody that really, really doesn't want to know a whole lot, I inform them as much as I possibly can.
Okay.
Because I like disclosure, and I want them to know what they're doing. So it's really important for me to inform them, even if I feel like it's over my head or this or that. They have to have some accountability here, because I want them to understand what they're signing up for. And if you understand it, then we're not going to worry about it as much later on. So that's one of the things. Now, a person that wants to know absolutely everything, this script and to a T, a lot of times they have a hard time letting go of all their assets or even more than a portion of their assets because they're more of like an engineer's mindset, right? They might want to do it themselves. And I get that. Look, if you give me a shot, we can show you the things that we do differently, and I'd be glad to share a little bit more with you, a little bit more and more over time. Doesn't mean you have to put all your business with me. No. I'll do whatever we think is best in your situation based on what you tell me. And then we have the middle ground people that they really want to know. They want to make sure everything's okay. They like to meet annually, have a conversation, discuss what's happened. Why didn't this particular index make money when the market was up? Or, oh, this index did really well while the market was up. Well, let's have that conversation. Let's come on in and talk about it. And then, okay, well, what about my market positions and so on and so forth? Of course, we talk about all these things. We discuss where you're at in retirement. Are you a couple of years away from another landmark of what we're doing here? You know, what are we accomplishing here? Because obviously these things could be staggered. It might not be a little set it and forget it. It might be something that's staggered. And with us, we're always looking at adjustments and switches and changes. So if we think there's something better we can do, we're going to tell you, and that's going to come up in our conversation as well.
Well, the other part of that conversation that I really liked was when she talked about the cost of being you. And I think that's something that we all discover when we walk into a financial advisor's office, because one of the first things you're going to talk about is what's going out, what's coming in. Let's figure out what it is right now and then figure out what it needs to be in retirement. Do most people know the cost of being you? Do they have that number in their head, and is it accurate when they come to see you?
Varies. It's all over the place again. You know, you have people that will tell me they think they know. I've had people retire. We thought we understood their expenses, but there were other things that weren't accounted for. And then they still wanted a good amount of money in the bank. And I thought, well, if you do that, this is what's going to happen over here. And again, that's why we have these conversations. We have to go deep into this and understand, is this accurate? Does this make sense? Have we accounted for everything? The annual expenses with the monthly expenses? Have we accounted for if you need a new car coming up sometime soon? If so, what does that look like? Do you have to do repairs at a house? So on and so forth. Oh, you lost a renter in a home. Whatever it might be. We have to have those conversations to understand the bottom line of your expenses versus your income and what your income is going to look like in retirement versus your expenses, what your needs are, what your wants are, and what your daily, monthly, and yearly expenses are.
Yep. There's a cost of being you right now in your working years. There's a cost of being you in retirement. That might be two different figures. Who knows? Let's figure that out. Give Marc a call. Go to the website. Find out more. Tool around more2retire.com. Just spell it right out. More2retire.com. There you'll see the steps to more. You'll see information there. There's also a place for you to put some information in there so Marc could reach out to you, or you could reach out to Marc. It's 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984. It's a no-cost, no-obligation look at your retirement. And we'll talk about that. What's coming in, what's going out, and what does your retirement look like? Again, 984-300-1984. If I told you that people who do this with their money have more fun in retirement, would you want to know? I'm going to tell you. Coming up next on the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. How many of you think taxes will go up in the future? And if they do, who will be hit the hardest? Most people say millionaires. But what about you, headed for retirement? You've been saving in that 401k or IRA, and that money has never been taxed. And Uncle Sam is looking at that account like it's a big, juicy steak. What do you do about it? You can call Marc Oslar. He believes a financial plan is not a retirement plan without a tax plan. If you don't check off this important box, you could see your Social Security check go down and your Medicare premiums go up. Fund your retirement, not Uncle Sam's. Call Marc Oslar today at 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984 or online at more2retire.com. Welcome back to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Online, more2retire.com. Find Marc right there, or at 984-300-1984. If it's time to talk about your retirement, let's get that conversation going. Mark will talk to you, no cost, no obligation. Let's just find out where you are, what your questions are, try to get those answered for you, and see if we can help when it comes to planning your retirement. And one of the things that we all want to do in retirement is not worry about our spending. I'd like to be able to just spend freely and not worry about running out of money. That's the number one problem with people going into retirement. According to the people at JP Morgan, when they sit down and build a retirement plan, they say if you have 60 to 80% of your income coming from guaranteed sources, you will spend 44% more in retirement than people who don't. I'm going to repeat that. If you put 60 to 80% of your money in guaranteed sources, you will spend 44% more in retirement. It says it reduces spending anxiety. It supports a higher standard of living. It sounds like a good idea. Mark, is this kind of a thumbnail rule that you look at? Is it something that you found? The more guaranteed income, the more people will spend and feel confident doing it?
Yeah, this is a grand slam right here. I'll be honest with you. The bases are loaded. I love this. I mean, that's the point. You're talking about fixed index annuities, multi-year guaranteed annuities. I'll give you an example. Let's say somebody has a multi-year guarantee annuity. It's really just an interest rate that's put on an annuity for a number of years, similar to a CD. So it might be a 5-year multi-year guarantee annuity. They call them MIGAs versus a 5-year CD. Well, generally speaking, in this interest rate environment, the MIGA is going to pay a little bit more. And that multi-year guarantee annuity is going to be a fixed rate of interest, and you know it's going to come in. You could take that interest, and that could be income, right? You could have a fixed index annuity that has one of those guaranteed lifetime income riders attached to it. That's what they're called, right? And that's when you have money you put into an annuity, and it acts like a pension. It is a pension technically, but it's not an immediate annuity pension. It's a deferred annuity pension. The difference is the money is still yours. You're just accessing the rider feature that can give you that lifetime income. If you end up using all the money, it'll continue to pay you the rest of your life. But if you die during the process, you can leave the money to a beneficiary. And that's the difference with that versus an immediate annuity, but they're still pensions. And when you hear pension, you hear military pension, you hear other types of pensions, federal pensions, yes, that's an annuity. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. And those are the sources that JP Morgan's talking about, whether it's that or a fixed interest rate that you can feel comfortable or rely on. Yeah, those are the areas that people are spending 44% more. And this is for real. And if you have more to spend off of these sources, you are going to feel more confident because you're not going to be worried about everything else.
You talk about buckets of money, and I think that's the key here is that the people who have guaranteed sources of income know that the bucket gets filled up every month. So you can go out and empty the bucket, and then the bucket gets filled. It's as simple as that. The question is, I mean, think about what are the alternate sources of getting money in retirement? You save $1 million and then you peel money off the top as you need it. That's one way to do it. But wouldn't it be better or wouldn't it be a good option to look at something that you put money into and it makes you money and it continues, that principal doesn't get touched, and you are taking interest off it, you're taking income off it like that. That's a different way of looking at it. The question that I have is 60 to 80%. That seems really high. But you know, that would mean if I saved $1 million for retirement, I would put $600,000 to $800,000 in guaranteed income sources. Is that number really needed, Mark, in order to give you the income that you need?
It could be. It could be a situation where you may need those types of things. And it just depends on how much money you have versus your expenses versus your income. And that's what we analyze here. We get an understanding. I might, like I said before in the past, I've had people that call that are retired military and they have a bunch of income. It doesn't seem to be the problem, right? So maybe it's the assets that they want to grow sensibly, maybe have some preservation tactics built in. But if you need the income, if you have nothing else planned other than a Social Security, we should have a conversation, not in a year or 5 years. Let's have a conversation now about it. Because if we have that conversation now, later on, it won't be such an issue. And that's the conversation we're going to have is this is what you can have later on at this age based on what you want to do. And if we continue to do those things and build in those preservation tactics, you'll feel confident about your spending habits in retirement. And that's what we want to accomplish for you. But we do need to know, is it coming from a Roth IRA? Because that could be income tax free. And that could help obviously with inflation. But if it's taxable, like an IRA or 401k, whatever it might be, we have to take into account taxes and inflation with income. And that's essential and it's imperative. So the question is, how much is your Social Security? Should we count on the whole thing, or should we deduct it down to, by 28% potentially if the trust fund gets exhausted by 2032? I think we should prepare for all of these things, and it's really important.
Well, I think that one of the things we want to know is, how are we going to get paid in retirement? That we get paid a paycheck every 2 weeks right now. You want to go into retirement knowing what your paycheck is. That is what comes out of a meeting with Marc. Give him a call. Get a look at the website, and let's start with that today. Get your questions about your retirement answered. You see your friends retire. You see relatives retire. You see what your parents did in retirement. It'll probably be very different for you, and we talk about that every week. A personalized, customized plan specifically for you. 984-300-1984, 984-300-1984, or more2retire.com. So if you're going into retirement as a couple, that means probably 2 Social Security checks, maybe 2 401ks, maybe 2 pensions, plus better tax treatment. But there's a lot of you out there that are going to go into retirement alone because of divorce, being a widow, or something like that. All that double stuff goes away. And so that means it's going to be a little bit tougher, and the planning is going to have to be a little bit different. Marc, when you sit down with somebody who's going into retirement alone, it brings up new challenges. Talk to me a little bit how that planning might be a little bit different.
Well, when you're talking about 1 versus 2, I've been down this road so many different times over the years, okay? Going back over 25 years ago as an insurance producer, now, obviously doing a brokerage and insurance and so on and so forth, just kind of going over when I first meet the person. They could be a couple, and then maybe the spouse passes away. That's one way it happens. A person just going into retirement as a single person, but then they get married, or a person just going in single and they stay single. So, you encounter all of these different things, right? And this is important to understand. As you go in, are we going to prepare for the what ifs? And what is your bottom line? Well, I sat down with someone recently, and they have not full on taken my advice yet, but we had many different conversations. And what I had to do is build a plan that gaps them from certain age to certain age to certain age until we reach this certain age. And by the time we reach this certain age, it's not an issue. But it was a plan that had phases, and we had to reach each phase appropriately, and it required some risk involved. So this is a conversation that comes up, is we're not going to sugarcoat anything. We're going to have a real conversation about what this might look like for you when you're facing a retirement. If you're a single person, come on in. Let's have a conversation and see how can we be of assistance to you in accomplishing your goals for retirement.
Couple of stats for you to kind of back this up. There are 11 million women 65 and older who are alone, who are single. 36% of people over 50 are divorced, and 50% of women age 70 are alone. And that is, I've just gone through a memory care unit for the last 5 years going to see my mom, and it's mostly filled with women. There's not a lot of guys there. Women usually outlive men. And Marc, this is another reason that as people come in as couples, it's important for both to be on page and on the same page, because if he goes out of the picture, she's got to know exactly what's going on and be a part of this, because she's going to be the beneficiary of all this planning. So she needs to be involved, doesn't she?
Absolutely. That it's imperative. It's essential. It's all a part of what we do. You're a couple that comes in, and let's just say the woman passes everything off to the man, or vice versa. The man passes everything off to the woman, because guess what? I've had it both ways. I do everything I can to engage both parties, because it's important, because you don't want a financial bomb when the other person passes away. Because guess what? There's a darn good chance it's not going to be like the Notebook. You're probably both going to die at different times. Yeah. Okay? That's just the reality of the subject. And let's just have a real conversation about what we're going to do in this situation if this person dies first or if this person dies first. Because yes, if you're going to talk to me about retirement, we're going to talk about what attorneys will talk to you about too, which is death, which is estate planning. And that we're going to have these conversations. It's important. We involve all the experts as we need to, the attorneys to get, obviously affect the law, make sure that they put things in place for you, whether it's a will or trust or whatever it might be. But we do high level planning here. So we have a lot of referrals, people we can refer you to do a lot of different things financially that you probably didn't know about. And there could be some tax advantages there. Of course, they'll involve the appropriate accountants and CPAs in those situations. But I'm just going to be honest with you. There's so many different things we can do. But when we're talking to the spouses, we want to talk to both of them, even if one is more involved than the other.
Yeah, when I think about my own family, both my grandmothers and my mom, each of them widows for over 20 years. It is statistically what happens. So to be involved in your financial planning is really a very important part of this. Give Marc a call. Let's talk through all of the details and the questions that you have. 984-300-1984. 984-300-1984, or the website is more2retire.com. Give Marc a call. No cost, no obligation meeting about your retirement. Let's get your questions out on the table. Well, I mean, I know my email's full of this stuff and my texts are full of this stuff. And I know my mom got a lot of this stuff. Emails and texts and phone scammers are out there and they are bilking billions of dollars from Americans every single year. And a lot of them are seniors. So I wanted to ask you about that, Marc, because I know just quick story about my mom. She went into the grocery store, and there she's standing at that place where they have all the credit cards that you can buy, and you can do all that stuff. And she's trying to buy Google cards, and she's asking for help. And the cashier goes, "Vonnie, why are you buying Google cards?" And she goes, "Well, I got this call from my grandson, and he's in Mexico, and he's in it." And she goes, "Oh, hon, that's a scam. Don't do this." And literally, the cashier at the grocery store saved my mom from being scammed. So one of the things that's common is they ask you to go out and get money, Google cards or cash or transfer money. Marc, if somebody comes to you, you're with one of your clients and they say, "I need, a large amount of money. I need to transfer a large amount of money." Does this send up flares and red flags in the office? And you're saying, "Ma'am, what exactly do you need this money for?" And you start to drill down on it.
Yeah, I was actually, I used to travel to Virginia and all parts of North Carolina through the state when I would run appointments back in the day. Okay. This is probably over 15 years ago. I'm up in Danville, Virginia, sitting with a client. There was a client of mine for a few years, and she's answering the phone. And I started noticing maybe a little slippage, but nothing drastic, right? And she answers the phone. And she's talking, and then she grabs a checkbook, and then she's starting to read stuff, and then I noticed she's trying to tell him her social. I said, "Hold on. Who is that?" She goes, I don't know. You want to talk to them?" I said, "Yeah, I want to talk to them."
Wow.
And then I go to grab the phone, and she goes, "Oh, she said she didn't want to talk to you," and they hung up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's different ways they're going about doing these things, and there's a little bait and switch. You might go search for Spectrum on your computer, but it might pop up something else at the top of the list that's not really Spectrum, or something else might happen. And this is how this bait and switch happens, and it's constantly happening. And they're really focusing on people that are obviously well over age 60, and that's where they're baiting them and going for that money. So for me, yeah, I've seen this happen. And we don't want to see it happen. We want to cut back on these types of things, and we don't want people to feel like their money's at risk. I will say this. The one account that you have a lot of risk with keeping a lot of money in is a checking account. And that's one of the conversations we'll have. You could always throw it in a money market account, and it'll be a little bit safer in that way, right? But a checking account definitely has a little bit more risk attached to it.
Yeah, there was a movie, I think The Beekeeper, which was a pretty good movie, and that was all about a woman who got scammed, and then, of course, Jason Statham comes back and gets all the revenge on the bad guys. But, I mean, that is, when you start seeing it in TV shows, you start seeing it in movies, you start to understand how common this is, and how people, once they realize that they've lost a lot of money, they don't have a lot of repercussions to get the money back. A lot of times that money's gone. So, I mean, one of the things I think that is so valuable about having a financial advisor in your life is if you're in the habit of saying, hey, let me check that with my advisor. Let me check. And if that's the procedure that you have kind of in your brain before you make a big financial decision that you're going to check with your financial advisor, Mark, that seems to me that's the kind of relationship that you want to build, isn't it?
Absolutely. I want somebody to come to me and say, does this seem legitimate?
Mm-hmm.
And I do. I have people come to me and ask me these questions constantly. It's very important. Just like when somebody asks me, what about my information with you? Oh, okay. Well, one of the things we like to do is we like to have a VPN that we use. And so that virtual private network will help provide some protection for you and your information. But then your information obviously is up to you. If you're logging into your accounts, let's just say if it's through our brokerage platform with Fidelity, you might be logging into Fidelity to look at your stuff there. But if you're looking at some of the insurance companies, could be different ones like Athene, North American, any of those companies, you're logging in. You got to protect your stuff there too as well. But the insurance companies are doing what they can to protect. And if something is breached, then they'll send you out a letter and let you know, and usually offer you some kind of coverage for a year or so. My objective is to make sure that none of this stuff happens to you. It's not a perfect world. It's actually becoming more imperfect. There's a lot of criminals out there, and they're really after your stuff and after your money because they've acquired this as a way of life. They think this is an actual job. And so the bottom line is, it's for us, our job is to make sure that we are on top of it for you and that you're on top of it for yourself as well. And if you can't be on top of it anymore, we want to make sure somebody's in your corner to be on top of it for you from your family or a close friend. And that's a really important one too. So we'll discuss that. I had a hard conversation the other day with a client, but I knew it had to happen. I went out to see them at their house in Sanford because the gentleman has been going through dementia. And, truthfully, we got to the point where I had to have the conversation, let them know, hey, you've taken care of your wife all of these years. Now it's time for her to take care of you, okay? Yeah. And that might be for, signing documents and other things like that. And those are the conversations you have. Whether they're well received or not, you have to have these conversations with folks.
You're listening to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience online, moretoretire.com, moretoretire.com. If it's time to talk about your retirement, well, give Mark a call, go to the website, learn more. Down at the bottom of the page is a place for you to put some information in there, and then Mark reaches out to you, or you can reach out to him, 984-300-1984, 984-300-1984. And one of the things that you're going to find when you go to the website, Mark, is your steps to more. And it starts with that, what you refer to as a treetop view. Explain to me what that is, how it all starts when somebody calls, and what the process is that you bring people through. And if they make the decision to become a client, what happens then?
All right, let's start from the top. Well, first of all, Marc Oslar Retirement Experience is just an acronym for more, right? And the website is More to Retire. And it's not the number 2, it's TO. Like I need more to retire. moretoretire.com. You go to my website. There's a few different things you'll see. If you want to know about our process, you click on process. You'll see our process guide, the pathway to more. And basically, we start with a treetop view. Treetop view could be a few different things. It could be us just kind of getting an understanding of all the different buckets of money you have and what we need to do now versus in the future. Or it might be, generally speaking, you want to give me a brokerage statement, run a report, and then talk about the treetop view together. We can do those things, but we're also going to go to step 2, which is discovering your retirement desires, your dreams, the things you want to accomplish now and in retirement, and also, of course, distribution to you, and then distribution to you and your family, depending on how long you live. So these conversations will come up through this process, and you become a client during step 3 when we personalize your financial plan. Because basically you're saying, okay, Mark, I agree. I want to work with you. I think you have all the tools and products that are possibly needed for this. So let's just go ahead and commit to this. And then we're going to personalize it and get serious about what we want to do. That's when we implement on step 3, personalize your financial plan. Then obviously, as you're a client, we're going to have steps 4 and step 5. Step 4 is adjustments and changes. I mentioned on this radio show many times in the past that little short story, Who Moved My Cheese? It's important to understand that we have to be willing to change. If you never read that book, please read the book, because it'll tell you better change. And that's the thing. We have to look. There's adjustments, there's switches, there's changes, because we have to be ready in life to be able to shift and change. And then step 5 is ongoing support. You're always going to get help from us, the team. We're going to be here for you. And we want to be those people that are with you through thick and thin.
You're listening to the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Online, as always, more2retire.com. Spell that right out. You may know these two things. You may know what you've done to save for retirement. You may know what you want to do in retirement. And then the next question is, now what? Okay, let's give you the now what. Marc just kind of outlined how that all takes place and the kind of the dominoes that fall. Let's first talk about what you've done, what you want to do. Now let's see what you're up against. What does this mean for you per month? What snags could we possibly run into? And as things change, and they will, who's going to support you along the way? Give Marc a call, 984-300-1984, 984-300-1984, or use the website, more2retire.com. There's a place for you to put a little information in there. Marc reaches out to you and starts that conversation. We hope you have a great weekend. We hope you check out the podcast. If you didn't hear the show, just look it up under the Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. We'll be here next week. We hope you will be too. Have a great weekend.
Insurance products are offered through the insurance business Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Marc Oslar Retirement Experience is also an investment advisory practice that offers products and services through Impact Partnership Wealth LLC, a registered investment advisor. IPW does not offer insurance products. The insurance products offered by Marc Oslar Retirement Experience are not subject to investment advisor requirements. Investing involves risks, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This radio podcast is intended for informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be considered as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual situation. Marc Oslar Retirement Experience is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during the show shall constitute legal or tax advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein are provided by third parties that have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Marc Oslar Retirement Experience. Market Guard is a firm that provides investment signals as well as portfolio allocation recommendations for a wide variety of model portfolios. Market Guard does not offer advice or enter into fiduciary relationships. Please remember that converting an employer plan account to a Roth IRA is a taxable event. Increased taxable income from the Roth IRA conversion may have several consequences. Be sure to consult with a qualified tax advisor before making any decisions regarding your IRA.